Welcome, everyone in YouTube land who is currently watching us go live. It's been a little while since we've done one of these, so we'll see how it goes tonight. We did twice before the season started. Our 10-12 Big 12 FanCast. We pulled some of the biggest Big 12 fans from social media and brought them onto our YouTube channel to do a live show. I enjoyed it so much. I thought, what a great way to wrap up the season. I understand we have bowl games and the college football playoff and so on and so forth. But when, a large chunk of your conference's season is done, it feels appropriate at this point, especially with players entering the border and so on and so forth, to kind of recap the season, the part that mattered the most. So joining us today, and we'll tell you both their name and their representation, she is Emily Bannister, UCF diehard. Now, what is the official, Emily, as I recall, they gave you like a title as far as your UCF fandom.
Yeah, they call me Zoom Girl because of the background that I put up when a coworker was talking about the Florida Gators. I put up the background of us beating them in the Gasparilla Bowl, and it went pretty viral. It still likes to make the rounds on Saturdays down south every once in a while. So they call me Zoom Girl, and I get called that at bars even. So
very nice, very nice. For his first appearance, he is Ryan, aka UH 10. I don't think there's anybody that hits me up in the 10-12 network DMs as much as Ryan does. Ryan, welcome, man.
Hey, thank you. Ready to have a fun discussion on how Big 12 is going and when it comes to football and how the season was this past year. And so, yeah, thank y'all.
Always happy to have some representation from a fan base who didn't love what happened. Another returning guest, Allison Renner, Kansas State fan. If you can't tell both from the shirt and the background, Allison, welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I try and keep this to like fans, not podcasters, but you're starting to make enough appearances on other shows. And Cocaine Willie, I was like this close to me, like, I don't know if she still fits the isn't a podcast host guest requirement anymore.
See, at this point, I don't have the time or effort to make my own podcast, so I just volunteer for other podcasts, and it works out pretty well.
As a consistent podcaster, being the guest is always more fun than being the host. So you're doing it the right way. And also making a return appearance, Raider Ty. If you're not sure which school he is associated with, his background and shirt will also help you in that regard. Welcome back, man.
Thanks. I always have to be careful when I throw the guns up on the virtual background because sometimes the green screen kind of takes stuff away and I'm just like putting a finger up. But I am actually very happy to see everybody again. And I'm also completely on board with Allison. The world just does not need another podcast. There's so many great podcasts. Listen to the Back to 12 podcast and just be a guest if you can and contribute to the already great ones that are there.
Yeah, the number of Texas Tech podcasts seems to like double. It is you cut off one head and like three more appear with Texas Tech podcasts. So every time one dies, more of them just start sprouting up everywhere.
I know. And the thing is, like, I feel bad because so like I listen to the Gambling Gauchos is probably my consistent like workout listen, but I've got buddies who do other ones. They have a lot of like really good like takes. They've got good analysis. Like it's all really good stuff, man. It's just there's just so little time to like get to all the podcasts. And it's like the next week I see this like burgeoning, tortillas and something, or some tech related cast. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm hitting you with that follow. I don't know when I'm getting to that first listen, but I'm definitely supporting you.
I will support as well as I can in the time that allows me. And I can't do people who listen to podcasts on like 1.5 or 2 times speed. I can't decide if I'm like proud of you or I think you're a sociopath. Like I have to go normal speed. I can't do the chipmunk voices. So it does limit like how many things I'm actually able to listen to. So we are not here today to provide any critique on any podcasts out there, although listen to all the Big 12 podcasts to be supportive of the Big 12 conference. We are here to talk about the Big 12. I've got a nice collection of questions that I sent out to our guests and we will see what other things pop up to our mind as well. Also to everybody watching right now, Benji, yes, #Hook'em for a little bit longer. And then come July 1st of next year, we're still going to have a Texas show, but we'll get to that then. Thomas Gross, welcome. Thanks for joining us. All right. Question number 1. Let's talk about the Big 12 as a whole. Texas wins the Big 12 in football. It wasn't Texas OU in Arlington. We were saved from that. OU did have a successful season. Kansas State had a good year. For newcomers, UCF the only one making a bowl game. You call it up and down for everyone else. Some of the teams didn't live up to expectations, and the conference championship game was probably the least exciting it's been since it came back, arguably. So looking at everything that went down this season, looking at the way the season has kind of gone for the Big 12 as a conference, do we consider this season a success for the Big 12? Ryan is our first-time guest. You're up first, sir.
I mean, overall, at a conference, it was about 500. Some of those cases, it was also against, what would be future Big 12 teams as well. And what I mean by 500, I mean by against P5 to be P4, I guess. It wasn't the best of years, and you would have wished that the conference championship, the conference champion wouldn't have been an outgoing team. But I would say it was not great, but it was a not bad one as well. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I would kind of say at the moment.
Fair enough. Allison?
Yeah, similar to that. I mean, it's hard to see Texas win, but they were definitely undisputed the best team in the Big 12 this year. I got to be kind of careful how I say this, because I don't think that the Big 12 really ever has a down year, because it's so competitive within the conference and it's always fun to watch. However, I don't think that any of the teams who are happy with their season, I think the only teams that are happy with their entire season are teams that weren't as bad as they thought they were going to be. I think all the teams at the top were pretty disappointed that they didn't make it to Arlington, other than Oklahoma State and Texas, but even Oklahoma State stumbled throughout their season. And again, they weren't as bad as I think a lot of people predicted. The teams I have as maybe being the only happy ones are obviously Texas. Iowa State wasn't as bad as we thought going in August. West Virginia, maybe, unless you really want Neil Brown gone. And possibly Oklahoma State, just because they did make it to the championship, but had a pretty sad performance there.
They were in attendance. They didn't really show up, I think is a good way of describing it. Benji, it was a down season. No, it was bad. Okay, congratulations. Texas beat a bad conference, I guess, is the messaging you want to send there. Emily, what are your thoughts on the Big 12 this year?
I'm calling it a win. Going into the conference championship, even so the Oklahoma State BYU game, there was an implication there that if Oklahoma State lost, it was going to be two outgoing teams that were going to be in the conference championship. And I think at that point in time, you have to call the season a loss for the Big 12. The fact that Oklahoma State was technically there, I'm going to count that as a win for the conference. And even though Texas is outgoing, yes, at the end of the day, if Texas ends up being the national champion, I'm not saying whether or not I think they are or aren't going to, they are going to go down as a Big 12 winner. And so we will get that money if they do win the conference gets that money if they do win the national championship. It is in the record books as a Big 12 team. And so I think overwhelmingly, yes, it's a successful season. You can't say you don't want a team to go to the national championship just because they're an outgoing team. And so then I think it reflects well on the conference that they were competitive enough within the conference to deem a spot within those four, especially looking at FSU's situation, not making it into the four and the outrage there. Texas did what they needed to do. They're representing the Big 12. And I think because you then had other representation in the Big 12 championship, I think overwhelmingly I'm going to say it's a win for the conference for the season.
That's fair. Raider tie.
Well, obviously, as the Texas Tech representative, I'm kind of in hell, but overall, kind of a good second half. So the Big 12 finishes with 9 bowl eligible teams this year. It's actually pretty balanced, generally, like across the league as far as other conferences that had bowl eligible teams. We saw a lot more balance this year. The Pac-12 decided to be more competitive and actually got 8 teams this year. So good to see the balance. Mentioned earlier, we've got really kind of a nightmare scenario for the Hateful Eight contingency, who wanted to see Texas and Oklahoma lose, obviously, this year. But a lot of consistency. Like I said, 9 teams got in, so a lot of parity within the league. I think it's a lot of stuff that we're going to see moving forward. as you see, the resource gaps are a lot thinner between a lot of these programs from a resource standpoint, from a recruiting standpoint. I think it'll, what we saw to this year, it will be kind of a good sign of things to come. But overall, it was the mid-12 kind of lived up to its name this year. A lot of parity. Wish that my own alma mater had been on the right side of a couple of those games. But overall, not too bad. Not a bad year.
Fair enough. I think if we are being honest, and I think everyone kind of has been, like, there are positive takeaways from this season, but I don't feel like it's the success for the Big 12 as a conference that the 2 previous seasons were, right? When you got teams that you already knew Oklahoma and Texas were leaving eventually, you got a conference championship game that featured teams that were sticking around. You got a TCU in the college football playoff, like in the national championship game, and I don't care what that game looked like. You can call the 2 previous seasons a success. Going into this year, it didn't feel like it had the star power. It didn't feel like it had it was the Big 12, as we talk about on a consistent basis. It is not a reload conference. Everyone just, the next guy up, it's going to be the same thing. It's Alabama. It's all that. It is a entire conference of teams that have up cycles. And it felt like most of the conference was not at the peak or right before the peak of their up cycle. And so it was a little bit, I guess you could say, of a down year. Texas is really good. That's why they won the conference. It's, if you want to look at it from the standpoint, if it stinks because they're leaving, like, I get it. It's still a win that it wasn't Texas and Oklahoma both there. So, like, I think it was a fine year for the Big 12. I don't think it took away from the interest or excitement about having 4 new schools, and it doesn't certainly make any of us less excited about next year when there'll be 4 more new schools who join the conference. Mentioning those 4, let's turn to the 4 newcomers. So I'm very excited that Emily and Ryan are here. Look, only one is going bowling in UCF, and they had to pull off some incredible stuff down the stretch to do so. One of them fired their head coach in Houston, and one of them got 1 conference win, and it didn't come against any of the incumbent teams. It came against the Houston team that fired their head coach. I think Cincinnati and BYU, I think, would be disappointed knowing that they had 5 wins for like 5 weeks in a row and couldn't seal the deal in any of the other games to get to bowl eligibility as well. So how do we look at the 4 newcomers based off of even preseason expectations to now and grade the season for them in their first year in the Big 12? Emily?
Yep. So I think automatically, if you don't make a bowl game, you're at a D. So, I mean, I think that bowl eligibility is the absolute minimum that you can ask for. In the preseason, when we talked about my expectations for UCF, I said that bowl eligibility would be considered a pretty good season in my book, especially with the unknowns of the team. So with that said, I give UCF a C+. They did beat the number 15 team in the nation handily, held them to three points, held Ollie Gordon to 25 yards. Can't really ask for much more than that. Had some pretty devastating losses, had some pretty devastating injuries, but we're going bowling. So I'll give them a C+ there. Everybody else, I think, is a pretty flat D, because it doesn't matter what moral victories anybody had. If you don't pull out the 500 rating, you don't pull out the 500 rating. And I think that's pretty much where I have to stand on that.
Ryan?
So mine kind of ranges. Cincinnati had a lot of turnover when it comes to getting things going, plus the change. That's really difficult to deal with. And what I mean by that is you go from, what they had the previous 2 seasons and a very senior-laden team to then what was going on this year. That's going to be just hard to go with. And then you're going to be stepping up in the league. Kind of taking a lot of that into consideration. Yeah, it's probably going to be somewhere in that D range. With UCF, I would put them. This was a pretty dang good year, and and I get the whole thing of the close but don't get it type item, but considering you're stepping up in league and they did as well as they did, and also with how things look when it comes to recruiting as well, and how that looks to be going. I would kind of put them more on the range of like a B to maybe an A-, just because of the possibility of what you're seeing and the things that's getting built there that this season may be a stepping stone into. BYU, I would probably say around the same thing, with a D or something like that, maybe a C, just because they're kind of getting things figured out, but it's not completely there. And for Houston, I give two different grades for this, and where it's a pre and post Dana type deal. The pre Dana is an F, and the reasoning why is we were lucky to get to 4 wins. This easily could have been a 2-win team, or worse, just because of the breaks that were kind of provided. If there wasn't a guy that lines up over center during a field goal against UTSA, you probably have a loss there. And then you had the miracle play against West Virginia, and then potentially whatever happened against Baylor. They pulled those items out, but I really question now as a post Dana grade, because I like the coaching hire so much, and they made the change, and then the type of hire they made, I'd probably put it to a C, just because the administration did the right thing and they made the correct choice on the person. Because I really like Fritz. And so, yeah, that's what I would kind of say.
Allison?
Yeah, so I gave out my grades based on my expectations for each team on the season. So they're actually kind of all about the same. I think every team kind of performed to my expectation, with the exception of one. So Cincinnati, C. I expected them to be last in the conference, and they were. I don't think there's much going on there, and honestly, I don't have a whole lot of hope for them anytime soon, because they've got a lot of work to do. But we'll see. BYU, I have a C-. I thought they would perform a little bit better, especially winning against Arkansas. Turns out Arkansas was just really bad, and they just couldn't get anything going late in the season. Houston, I have as a C+, because I expected them to win 2 games, and they doubled that. So even though they're very ugly wins, a win is a win. So I'll give them a little bump there. UCF is the only one I knocked down a little bit, because I had pretty high expectations for them going in. So I gave them a D, just because, especially when, I watched them play in Manhattan against K-State, I thought they had a lot of potential there. And again, they just couldn't get anything going consistently throughout the season. But, they did have a big win over Oklahoma State. Can't take that away. And I still have pretty high hopes for them in the future. I think once they kind of get things figured out, they get their recruiting up, they'll be a pretty good contender for the conference.
Raider Ty?
I'm with Allison in that this is hard to grade, because it's all based on what I expected from everybody. That was my baseline. And I mentioned this, and I got called just the newcomer hater. I think it is very, very hard to make the jump week to week. The physicality and the speed, the injuries that pile up in the first year. I said it at the beginning of the year that all 4 of these guys are going to go through some growing pains. It's just, and they've all done, frankly, they've done more than my program has in the last 10 years in the New Year's Six department. But there is a big difference between coming up and beating, and playing a hell of a game with the great players you have against one team, and the week to week grind that the Power 5 conference schedule has. But as far as overall grades, I can't give Houston a failing grade. I picked them to be bathwater this year, and they kind of were, but like Allison mentioned, they were a bit better. Everybody else essentially performed at what I expected. I think UCF is maybe a little bit lower, but not really. They probably were in the best position of all 4 as far as talent and just readiness with the conference. But I picked them at about 6 or 7 wins, and they did that. I was glad that we squeaked away from that game at the end. They've got a lot of potential. And I'm certainly, like I said, if Fritz can get things going in Houston, if they can get that fan base to invest and care and rally the donors up, Houston has so much potential. It's just such a big if. UCF is obviously one of the largest schools in the country and a major talent pool. So I'm not fading any of these guys moving forward. But as far as this year and expectations, this is about what I expected. But definitely glad they're here. And all of them seem you can just see with the moves that are being made that there's definitely focus and investment. to continue excelling, which I'm sure their fans are all super excited about. We as other fans of the conference should definitely be happy about too.
I'll go through mine quick. Cincinnati's an F. Like, it was an F higher before the season, and then you came in and won 3 games. And I mean, congrats on your wins over an FCS team, a god awful Pitt team, and a road win at Houston, who fired their coach. That was bad. That was very, very bad. Houston, I guess I'll give you a D-. I'll be nice because you actually did the thing and fired Dana at the end of the season. I think gives you a bump. I'm a little bit nicer to BYU. I think the quarterback injuries and a lot of the injuries they dealt with in BYU and the back half of that schedule was not fair. It was tough. And to be that close to beating Oklahoma State and being that close to beating Oklahoma, I'll give them a C grade, which is you were close enough to bowl eligibility that I'll give you a pass here, because I think my expectations for them were a little bit lower than they actually finished. And UCF, I think it's a hard thing for UCF of you are the only one who got a bowl game. And you found a way, despite having a horrible middle of the season, to get that bowl eligibility. But you left so much on the field too, where you should have probably beaten Oklahoma, and you should have beaten Baylor. I don't know. I still don't know how that game happened. You probably could have gone on the road and beaten Texas Tech. What's funny for UCF is the positive takeaway for them for this season is they were this close to their record being so much better. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to give them a good grade because they got to bowl eligibility despite all those problems, but I also want to knock them a little. I'm going to give you a B-. I'm proud of you getting bowl game, and you're the only newcomer who did it. You could have been even better. You could have been a 9-win team if you make a good call here and make a play here and make a play there. And I think they left out a lot on the field, but you can take that as a positive. Hey, we did all that. We still got to a bowl game, and that's got to make us feel good about year 2 when we've finally, done the whole Big 12 schedule once. Now we feel a little more acclimated to it.
I think I need to defend the team just a little bit too, because hearing you mention BYU quarterback troubles, and then I think you have to look at UCF and give the same graces. We did not have our starting quarterback for 4 weeks. We went to Kansas State, didn't have our starting quarterback. Went to Kansas, didn't have our starting quarterback. JRP came back for Oklahoma, had the flu. He played that game with the flu. And so I think you look at that and you look at some of those close games. Baylor, we lost. Timmy McClain just is not a closer. He's not a finisher. And so that's where I think I give UCF a lot of grace this season, is the quarterback troubles just absolutely nailed us, and some injuries on defense too. So that's where I kind of step in and just get a little defensive of them, because I do think that is a massive, massive consideration that a lot of people forget.
UCF lost 3 games by 2 or less points. That is brutal.
It's brutal.
And
yep.
That is a 9-3 team. If there's a couple, again, it's close only counts in grenades and horseshoes, but context should matter a little bit.
Context matters. And the other statistic that I think is very interesting about this team is UCF held the lead in every single second half of the season at some point.
That call at the end of the first half against Tech blew it. That Malzahn called blew it in that game for UCF.
Agree.
Ben, Pitt beat Louisville. Okay, good job. I don't know what Bushwick is. I don't know why. It looks like I live there. And no, I'm not in a dungeon. I'm actually at my office because I get better Wi-Fi, and I have a podcasting studio whose background is not Lego sets I've built with my 3 girls. So I thought this might be a little bit more appropriate for a YouTube live than my children's playroom sitting in front of some cozy couch cushions. Okay. I think we are so far kind of feeling a little bit consensus on some of this stuff. Although, yes, Allison is a bit of a tough grader. You know what? It's harsh but fair. Harsh but fair. Okay. We had some absolutely incredible games this season, despite it being a down year for the Big 12. So I'm going to ask you guys 1, 2, 3, whichever ones you want. What do you think were the best games in the Big 12 this season? Raiders high.
Texas, Oklahoma. No one wants to hear that, but yeah, that one was probably the best game of the year. This was a sicko game, but the ending makes it great, and that was West Virginia and Houston. I got to pour one out for my man Donovan Smith. I am so happy that he has found a great home at UH. I don't know how Cougs fans have felt about him throughout the course of the year, but I love that for Donnie, and I just. I think I tweeted like, I trust the climb, right before the Hail Mary. Sicko, disgusting game. But Houston pulls it out, and that was a lot of fun. And then I guess for the third game, again, just because it was crazy, I'll say Central Florida and Baylor, even though I don't really like seeing Baylor. I kind of just the only way this would have been better is if literally the outcome was different. Like if the comeback happened but fell just short, because I don't love seeing Baylor happy. But those are probably my three.
Rivalries never die. Ryan.
One, I have a thing for snow games. I don't know if that just comes from my dad or whatnot, but Farmageddon was an incredible watch. Sorry for wheat losing to corn, but that happens sometimes, I guess. That was hilarious. Those signs were hilarious, by the way. I didn't know that you truly had a war over commodities. Anyway, after that, yeah, OU UT was a fantastic watch, just how crazy that always is. And then Oklahoma State, OU, and the hilarious choices also by the Oklahoma State administration and those who are overseeing the game to play certain songs after the game ends to just kind of put a little knife into OU's side with how that one went. Yeah, that was fantastic. So that's what I would probably say. Regarding that West Virginia Houston game, when that Hail Mary happened, all I could do was I didn't cheer. I just laughed because of how ridiculous that game was. Like that game was so anyway, that's all I got.
Allison.
Yeah, so if I was looking at every single Big 12 game on the schedule and kind of picking the best game, if I could go back to one of those games, I would choose Bedlam. But I did not watch that game because I was in Austin, Texas that weekend watching K-State play Texas. So that was my best game of the year that I actually watched it unfold live. Unfortunately, it did not have the outcome I wanted to, and I was very sports sad afterwards, especially being stuck in your opponent's college town. But it was an incredible game, just the emotions that we all went through as K-State fans, as Texas fans. The first half of the game, I sat next to some not great atmospheric fans. I saw some openings on the other side of the stadium, so I just walked over, met some really awesome Texas fans over there that went through all the emotions with us through the second half when we thought it was all over, coming back, going to overtime, our kicker missing just very painful extra points and field goals, and the decision to go for it in the last bit. I was seriously covering my eyes. The Texas fans behind me were doing that whole thing of like, no, you have to watch. And unfortunately, very sports sad after that. But it was a great game environment, even being in a different stadium that's not your own.
I imagine it's that scene in Bird Box where he's just like holding her eyes, like, no, I will force you to watch this, however it's going to go. Emily, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so in no particular order, I had Oklahoma State versus BYU. I think that one went to double overtime. I was sitting on my couch. It had huge implications for both teams. Either Oklahoma State was going to the conference championship or BYU was going to be bowl eligible in their first year. So that one was just really fun, especially Oklahoma State coming back from a deficit and winning it out was a really fun one to watch. My fan base isn't going to love this, but I had Baylor versus UCF. I tried to be very objective when making this list, and if I were not a UCF fan, if I were just a college football fan sitting on my couch and I saw that UCF was up 29 points and then looked down at the scoreboard and saw that they were coming back, I would have turned that one on, and that one would have been a really fun watch too. So I had that one on there. And then I also had Houston versus Texas. I watched that. I was in OU. I'm from Oklahoma. Bye, Ryan. I was in Oklahoma. I watched it at a friend's house. That was just such a close game. We were really hoping that Houston would pull that one off, and I just had a good time watching that one. So those were my three.
I think those are all great options. The only other ones I had on the list as I'm trying to work through like a top 10 games list for this year would be Sunflower Showdown between Kansas State and Kansas. I know that one's hard for Kansas fans because you had this lead, you had your shot. Kansas State pulls the come from behind comeback win. Kansas over Oklahoma. See, Kansas, there are positives on this list. Kansas finally beating Oklahoma in the last year they play each other. Like, that game was insane and so much fun to watch. And I'm counting this one. I don't care that it was a non-conference game. They're joining us. I put Colorado TCU on the list because I feel like we've all forgotten, because both teams ended up being bad, that game happened. And the national attention that game generated, because everyone's like, what the heck is happening? The team that was just lost the national championship is in a tight race with Colorado, one of the worst FBS. When it's Dion, everything about that game, surrounding that game, and it's a Big 12 game next year. It was just fantastic, incredible, and that was a great way to kick off the season. I think was having that one as a future Big 12 game. So I love you guys as additions to the list. I'm going to put something out on Patreon that's got our top 10 for the year, but we'll get to that. Okay. Last question of the night before we get you out of here. Obviously, we do have bowl games. 9 teams are bowling in bowl season. We actually kick things off the first day. It's wild to me that it's usually like, all right, so bowl season kicks off and I'm just going to watch everything, but we've got like a week before Big 12. Nope. Texas Tech and Cal on December 16th, the very first day of bowl season. Cannot wait for that one. So here's the caveat on this, and I forgot to include it in the notes, but I'm going to do it now. Which bowl game are you most excited about? But you cannot pick the one that your team is playing in because that is lame. So, Allison, you're up first.
Dang, really kind of putting me on the spot. So I was going to say, outside of the Pop-Tarts Bowl, because who would not get excited about eating a life-size mascot that somehow transforms to be edible?
This is not editable.
Some questionable wording there from the Pop-Tarts Bowl committee. But if it counts, I am going to pick the Sugar Bowl. I have friends that go to the University of Washington, and I've always kind of been a bit of a Washington fan just because they're another purple team out there and they have a really cute mascot. So I know it's, Texas is a Big 12 team, but I'm still not over that game from Austin, and I'd really like to see Washington pull out a national championship. So that's my pick.
Fair enough. Raider Ty?
I think I'm going to throw a bit of an unconventional one because I think the matchup is really interesting. I'm actually pretty intrigued by the matchup in the Pop-Tarts Bowl with Kansas State going up against North Carolina State. NC State, a top 25 defense. Kansas State, obviously a very physical team that leans a lot on their run game and the really good offensive line. So love that matchup a lot. I think that will probably be a lower scoring game, but I always enjoy these ones where it's like, NC State, wait, they're ranked? Like, wait, they've done things this year? Like, that's weird. So would probably say that for my unconventional pick. And it's a tie between that one and Texas A&M and Oklahoma State, just with a Big 12 South rematch from Texas A&M. They've dodged us for all these years, but they get matched up with Oklahoma State. So definitely excited to watch that one.
Shout out to the Pop-Tarts Bowl, specifically to Pop-Tarts and to Manhattan Brewing Company. We're going to do a live show next Sunday. We are doing a Pop-Tart and beer pairing. We're going to do taste tests. So we have 4 Pop-Tarts and 4 beers from Manhattan Brewing that we're going to do. I am very excited for the perfect kind of weird December content to put out right before the holidays and bowl season. So we'll have that live here next Sunday as well. Okay, Emily, what's your pick?
So I want to make sure that I say that I actually had selected this one before your caveat, and it was actually the Liberty Bowl, Iowa State versus Memphis. And there's a reason why that one is my favorite, and that is because, no offense to Ryan, I did not believe that Houston should have been given the fourth spot into the Big 12. I thought that it should have been Memphis. I've always really enjoyed Memphis. UCF has like a pretty interesting budding rivalry with them. We played them for conference championships back-to-back years in the American Athletic Conference. They were always really talented. They had some really fun players. Some guys go to the NFL. And for them to have a matchup now against a Big 12 team, I just think in my head is like this fun little like if Memphis somehow pulls out the win over Iowa State, it almost like verifies like my previous decisions. Memphis obviously doesn't have the greatest strength of schedule, but they did beat Boise State, who was a conference champion, and they hung in there with Missouri. They lost by I think 3 points. So that was the one that I was most excited for. A nod to Raider tie. My knee-jerk reaction when you asked this question was the Texas A&M game, but with them losing the coach, that one's not as interesting as a matchup to me as it probably would have been. But that would have been my second choice.
I think it was Brett McMurphy who put out a tweet, and I don't want to go look it up, so I'll paraphrase from memory. There's only like 9 bowl games that don't feature like a starting quarterback in the portal or a new head coach or like some major shakeup from either the transfer portal or coaching moves. Like 9 teams, not 9 bowl games, like 9 teams in bowl season have not been completely like blown up going into it, which is just, I mean, it does, because you look at some of these matchups and you say, this would be good, but like, yeah. So before I continue that, Ryan, what's your pick?
Honestly, just because, I have to admit I'm kind of in full blown basketball season now, but just because of how things have gone and how hoops has been, I'm actually very much anticipating this weekend when we play A&M. But no, I would kind of go with the Texas Bowl itself, just because of any time someone can potentially take down either UT or A&M, I'm all for it. And if it's the Pokes, I might go to that game. And so with it being not far from where I am, and so yeah, that's what I would that's what I'm going to kind of go with. And so yeah,
I am picking the Alamo Bowl, and I'm just going to be as like Big 12 like biased as possible. Future Big 12 member versus exiting Big 12 member is perfect, fantastic. Like, would love to see Arizona beat Oklahoma on their way out and be like, well, that's one more Big 12 team who has beaten Oklahoma in their final season is Arizona. We're going to count that as a Big 12. Either way, we're just going to count it as a Big 12 win. So if Oklahoma wins, like, congratulations, you win your final bowl game as a member of the Big 12. If Arizona wins, congratulations, this was your first official Big 12 game. We let you come in a little bit early. You can roll early in the conference, and congratulations, you got that win. So also, it should just be a good game. Like, it should be, except no Dylan Gabriel. So again, like,
always play both sides when you can.
Oh, of course. Yes.
So the Alamo Bowl and the Pop-Tarts Bowl are the only 2 non-New Year's Six bowls that have both ranked teams, which kind of adds in another just fun part to it. But yeah, that one should be a really good game.
I need to see Kleiman have to take a bite from a living, breathing, walking, human-sized Pop-Tart. There's other coaches that would be more fun to see.
The whole offensive line gets a bite.
it's either going to be incredibly awesome or incredibly weird and awkward, and I'm really hoping it's the second. Like, there's no way that's not weird. I'm like, oh, come here, man, I'm gonna take a bite out of you. No, please, that's not okay. You guys have been fantastic, and this has been a ton of fun. I always enjoy doing this stuff, and I think it's really fun to have fans of the Big 12 with such personality. That's like, let's just grab a few and put them on live and see what happens. And you guys have delivered every time we've done this. So here's your chance. Plug your social. Where can everybody find out all the craziness you have when it comes to covering and talking about your team in Big 12 itself? Emily.
Yep. So you can find me Emily_Bannister on Twitter. I like to throw a bunch of fun stuff out there, mostly UCF stuff. So if you're looking for somebody that just retweets a bunch of UCF accounts and puts an occasional meme up there, that's me.
Very good. Ryan?
X, Twitter, it's at UHCougs10. I'll be posting probably a lot more with basketball season going on. And probably because I try not to do too much ranting on there when it comes to certain sports. But no, if you ever want to have discussions or anything like that, feel free. And so, yeah.
Ryan's happy to hop in your DMs and talk about Big 12 in Houston. Raider Ty.
Yep, find me at RaiderTie92. The PFP is a badly photoshopped image of The Rock with googly eyes. For those of you who are fans of Everything Everywhere All at Once, one of the greatest meta movies ever, with a Texas Tech cap poorly photoshopped on it. So generally tweet Texas Tech propaganda, but very proud and happy about my Big 12 following. Love just talking Big 12 sports in general. So a lot of tech memes, a lot of bad photoshops. Hopefully it's fun. Never let the bird or the X app hurt your feelings. Rare to have a good time.
No. And Allison.
Yep, it's Allison_Renner on Twitter. So it's always Twitter to me. Mostly K-State stuff, some Big 12 stuff, a little bit of NFL, getting into basketball season, and now I guess free marketing for Pop-Tarts and Kellogg.
They get you down there. Do you want to wear the Pop-Tart costume when they all have to like come and eat it at the end of the game? Would you be willing to?
Not at the end of the game. I'm
Okay.
good. But I have bought a couple boxes of Pop-Tarts. I'm not gonna lie. It's really worked its magic on me.
I've got 5 boxes my kids keep asking about. I'm like, no, not till after I do this YouTube live. And then you can have everything that's left over. You just, to your heart's content, children. Merry Christmas. I'll put bows on it and everything. You can just dig in. Children love Pop-Tarts because of course they do. Although one of the flavors is like unfrosted strawberry, because I'm convinced Jerome Tang is actually secretly a sociopath, because those are the only kinds of people I know who buy unfrosted Pop-Tarts. It's fine. We're going to make it work. The pairings will be beautiful. You guys are awesome. Thank you, everybody. If you're watching tonight, watching later, like the video, subscribe. Appreciate it. We'll keep putting out content like this. I fully expect we'll do something basketball related like this come January. Maybe you'll see. Ryan has just asked to come back on immediately. I know he'll be excited to do so. Thanks again to everybody who's been watching. Thanks again to our guests, and y'all have a good week.